The air of the Supreme Court room was as thick with tension as it could have been with the threat of a gavel. The onlookers sat in complete silence, the quiet almost a strangle, a religious freedom and equal rights case that would make a precedent and define the law. A case so charged, it would have the ability to rend the country in half and destroy the very foundations of constitutional interpretation. But behind the grand mahogany bench, there was another kind of storm on the horizon, one that no one anticipated. A whispered but explosive confrontation that would leave even the most experienced justices speechless. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, the court's newest and youngest member, sat with perfect posture. Her face tranquil, her eyes wide with attention. It was the first time she had presided over a case of such nationwide importance without deferring to the senior justices. But as the day progressed, it became evident that her steady state was riling something quite different in Chief Justice John Roberts, the senior-most member of the court. Roberts, whose brains and famously icy demeanor had long commanded the room's respect, had long had the room's respect. But in the years since, he had been accused of playing it too safe, tightrope walking instead of standing firm on principle. His reputation was now conservative, maybe even vulnerable. And something about Barrett's placid demeanor seemed to strike a chord. When the justices were briefly in recess, while they were quietly discussing process off the record, Roberts jumped in with a remark that transformed the whole tenor in the chamber. "So, Amy," he asserted, the sneer in his voice clear and barely loud enough for aides and other justices to hear, "are we interpreting the law today, or simply reading out of your prayer book?" A jarring silence followed, a silence so piercing that it felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Clerks gazed down, aides braced themselves, others stood frozen, eyes wide, holding their breath. Barrett did not blink. With unflinching calm and her face expressionless, but her eyes afire with inner flame, she regarded him and spoke in a voice clear and measured. "John, when I swore my oath, I took an oath to defend the Constitution. Not my personal faith, and certainly not what other people have in mind that they think I should be. Yes, I pray before acting, but I do not pray around the decisions. And if you equate faith with weakness, perhaps you have forgotten that conviction. Any type of conviction is what gives the law its very soul." A current of energy pulsed through the courtroom. Even though it was off record, the exchange sent shockwaves. No one had ever spoken to Chief Justice Roberts like that, let alone a justice he had subtly tried to minimize from the very beginning. Roberts gave a dry half-laugh, clearly unsettled. "Well," he muttered, "we'll see whether passion can substitute for precedent." But from that moment on, everything changed. When the hearings reconvened, it was Barrett who presided, her questioning sharp, her logic solid, and her empathy not to be questioned. The case concerned a devout Jewish baker who had refused to offer services for an event that was contrary to his religious beliefs. The plaintiffs, a same-sex couple, alleged their civil rights had been violated. Barrett posed the questions that both sides did not expect. She cut through lawyer jargon and got to the heart of the matter. She asked the baker what love was. She asked the couple what faith was to their families. She did not use the law as a sword. She used it as a prism, enabling the court to zoom in on the individuals behind the headlines. Justice Sotomayor, who had earlier questioned Barrett's readiness, gave a small, thoughtful nod. Clarence Thomas leaned forward, obviously listening. For the first time, Barrett was not the new kid trying to get her bearings. She was the one standing quietly but firmly in charge. After the arguments were done and the justices retired to confer, Roberts was alone in the hallway with Barrett. She stood there, her eyes distant, lost in thought. "I owe you an apology," he whispered. She turned, uncertain if he was sincere. "You were right," he went on. "I'm guilty of allowing fear of legacy blind my vision to your character. You're not here to fill a mold. You're here to create the future." Barrett produced a slight, tired smile. "We all are, John. The law isn't what is, it's what can be." Weeks later, the Supreme Court rendered a 6-3 ruling roundly applauded as one of the most balanced in recent history, one that maintained anti-discrimination protection and religious liberty through a novel, less visible legal approach. What the press never mentioned, though, was what truly shifted on this day, behind the closed doors. Not the doctrine of the law merely, but something deeper. That day, Amy Coney Barrett did not respond with anger or bitterness, but with strength, with grace, and unshakable clarity. She reminded the court and the nation that the bench's highest power doesn't lie in how loudly one argues, but in how deeply one hears. From others, from the law, from their own truth, and in that one defining instant, she did not merely astonish the courtroom.